Yesterday, MAGA supporting domestic terrorists took siege of the Capitol building, and there's a lot that goes into it and a lot that we should take out of it. So let's just get right into it. There's a lot of things that led up to this siege, and one of the main things was that Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock thankfully won their Senate runoff elections. Now, this means a lot of things for us, especially on the left. For one, the GOP has now lost their seat at president, vice president, and their Senate majority because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won their seat at presidency, and since there's a 50-50 split in the Senate between the GOP and the Democratic Party, the vice president gets to decide who will be the majority. And obviously, Kamala Harris will pick the Democrats. Now, this was a huge source of outrage for the GOP, but there was one other thing that was going to happen yesterday that caused even more outrage, and it was Joe Biden's approval by Congress to become president, which would be the last step before his actual inauguration for him to be named President of the United States of America. As this was happening, hundreds of thousands of Trump supporters flooded into DC from all corners of this country to protest the results of the Georgia election and protest the results of the general election in the country. From here, this mob started marching up Pennsylvania Avenue, got into a clash with the police outside of the Capitol building, and slowly but surely made their way into the building itself. When they were in the building, they started horsing around on the Senate floor, broke into Nancy Pelosi's office and stole an envelope from there, and many, many other things. And just so you guys know, this was an act of terrorism, domestic terrorism. Police finally showed up and took out all of the terrorists in our Capitol building, as well as implementing a 6 p.m. curfew. At the 6 p.m. curfew, all of those that escaped the building and all of those that were still protesting were dispersed using tear gas and batons, and that was the end of the story, at least for that night. There are three main points I want to make on this situation. Number one is that this is incomparable to the BLM riots we saw in June for one main reason. See, the BLM riots weren't based on pure conspiracy. We saw the death of George Floyd. We saw the death of Breonna Taylor. We saw the death of Eric Garner ourselves and decided to protest. And some of them turned violent. And actually, fun fact, a lot of those that turned violent were incited by police. Regardless, the riot and domestic terrorist act we saw yesterday was based on pure conspiracy. The Department of Homeland Security, Trump's own Department of Homeland Security, said that this was the most secure election in American history. As well as this, Attorney General William Barr had to resign because he said that there were numerous cases of voter fraud and this was a sham election until his own department did investigation and turned no dice. The second point I want to make is that Trump is a major factor in inciting these riots. Number one, he said on the day of the riots yesterday that he wanted him and his supporters to march up Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, Donald Trump is a smart enough individual to realize that 100,000 people marching up Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the Capitol building is going to do no good. If anything, it's almost a guarantee that there was going to be some sort of violent outbreak, there would be a clash with the police, and something would happen at the Capitol building. Of course, President Donald Trump would never expect the proportions that this riot took to. However, Donald Trump was not quick to stop it. Also, Donald Trump tweeted out 4 times yesterday. 2 of these tweets were tweets telling his supporters to stay peaceful, and the other 2 tweets were justifying their actions, saying that this was a sham election and that he understands where his powerful and empowered supporters are coming from. Also, the video that he made later in the day, I can't even show you guys because YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook won't even allow it on their platforms because it's such a blatantly, obviously propagandistic video, was made to pander to these people. Obviously, his words held very little weight because his supporters were probably convinced at this point that it was Antifa trying to force him to say that. Now, number 3, and this is the biggest point I want to make, is that there was almost no pushback on these protesters trying to get into the building, which turned them into rioters and then domestic terrorists. When the riots began, everybody saw that the policing outside the Capitol building was extremely low. And it's almost shocking that our police force in Washington, D.C. couldn't expect something like this to happen after seeing everything that's happened in the past 4 months. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Later in the day, the National Guard was called on to the Pentagon, and guess what? The Pentagon denied the request until later in the day when Vice President Mike Pence made an order for the National Guard to come in and take out all of the rioters at the building. And what do you know? Mr. President Donald Trump played no role in seeing the National Guard come to the Capitol building. So what do we do going forward? In my opinion, in the next few days, impeachment trials should start of our 45th president. And if those impeachment trials are to be unsuccessful, I believe that Mike Pence should invoke his 25th Amendment right to take Donald Trump out of office. I truly believe that if Donald Trump is not disgraced before leaving office, he will still maintain a significant chokehold on the Republican Party. The only way he can really be disgraced in today's America is by being impeached and removed from office, which would be the first time that happened in history, and it would be the first time in history that a president gets impeached twice, or he would be betrayed by his vice president that has been so subservient to him since the beginning because he was such a failure of a president. Overall, there's a lot for people to think about the situation. Twitter has been going crazy, and it's just the beginning of the year. I think that everybody was expecting something like this to happen because it almost seemed impossible that Trump would walk out of office peacefully and that nothing would happen to our country in the process. Thank you guys for watching, and stick around. Later today, I'll be posting another video.